Hello, and welcome back. So that was our little brief transition there. We are really excited to have join us Daniel Lui from the Chinese tea shop in Vancouver. Really pumped. There's a lot of reasons for this, but Daniel, the first time I met him, I went to his shop and he hung out with me for he let me stay in his shop for like 4 hours. I think we drank
Oh
Puerh
yeah,
together. So
that's
Dan,
always happened to tea lovers.
yeah, right. We were just there's just a big hangout session that happened. So really excited to have you with us today, Daniel.
Oh, thank you for asking me to join your tea revival. Right, so I would love to share my experience, my my knowledge about Pu'er teas, right, tea makings, right, and I love if anyone has questions, so we can discuss together.
Lovely. Yeah, I always tell people when they go to Vancouver, they need to go check out your shop, and I explain to them about the amazing Yixing teapots you have, your collection of old tea cakes that you have, and your wealth of knowledge. So yeah, really excited to have you on, and also Daniel, this might be the first time that you're meeting Ryan here. Ryan is
Hi, well,
Ryan is the co-director of the Tea Festival Revival. He's been in the mix for the last 5 years with me. So I'm often the person that talks to the farm to the people that come and do the presentations and have the
mhm.
tables. But Ryan is a huge part of making sure that there's people there to learn, and he's a huge part of organizing and doing all of these behind the scenes things. So it's really fun to have him join the conversation today and be a part of this. Can you believe we're going to be on for 24 hours, Daniel? It's crazy. What you don't know, Daniel, I didn't get a chance to tell you this, is I do have one of your cakes with me that I thought I would bring.
Uh-huh.
It's this 1990s Ding Xing Hao Pu.
好, yes, right, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one, right?
Yeah, that it would be a very a specialty cake
Yeah,
because the no matter from the leaf that they pick,
yeah.
the region of the tea trees, and also the way they blending the recipe, like so it's really follow the ancient way.
Nice. Okay, so we figured you were going to do a little bit of a discussion on an exploration of old cakes.
Mm-hmm.
But while we were talking to you, Ryan and I gave some to Ryan. Ryan's not actually here with me. He's in James Bay. He's in Victoria. But I gave him
Mm-hmm.
some of this tea cake before we parted ways this morning. Um, so I figured I could make some while I have you on the air. Um,
Mm-hmm.
does that sound like a plan? We can drink tea, and you can talk to us about just what you planned on talking. But we'll be drinking some
Mm-hmm.
of the tea that you brought in. Um,
Okay.
so hold on one second. I'm just gonna throw some into this pot here. So what did you want to talk about today, Daniel?
Okay. So actually, I because I thought there's so many things we can talk about Pu'er, right? Could be the Shen Pu'er, Show Pu'er, right?
Right, right.
So which one is better? What's the difference? And then so should we drink Shen or Show, right? What is the best time? Right? So that is we can talk about, and also about the Gushu right now, because really a very hot topic about Gushu Pu'er or Tai Di Cha. People we always have a negative feeling about Tai Di Cha, right?
Right.
So is that Tai Di Cha really bad? So we can talk about this, and then also how to buy Pu'er or how to select a good Pu'er tea, right?
Right.
Because people are always ask like if especially when people they are new to Pu'er, that they have not much idea that what Pu'er tea they should choose to buy or to buy for drinking, right?
Right. Okay. So like kind of
And
a
also we also can depend on the time, right? So we also can talk about the how to storage Pu'er, right? Because we know Pu'er tea will continue the fermentation.
well
So what is the best way
we have about
to storage Pu'er, right? And then of course that we can also talk about how to break, because now right now you're breaking the Pu'er tea cake.
yeah. No,
So
I'm doing
people
it.
may not know that it is so important to break the Pu'er tea cake, tea bricks or torcha in a proper way.
I'm probably
Right?
doing
So
it
this
all wrong.
No, you're doing very good.
Am I
Very
doing
good, Sam.
okay? Am I doing okay?
Very
Okay.
good.
I tried
You
to get a
are
little bit of the center and a little
you
bit
are
of the
experienced.
outside, like you told me
Yeah,
to.
I can tell you experienced.
Oh,
Very good.
good. Okay, good.
And then so once we break the Pu-erh tea to into small pieces,
Yeah.
then what kind of teapot or teaware should we use, right? Because the teaware really affect the taste of the tea, right? So right now you're using a very good teapot
Okay.
to make a pour, right? Yeah, and
Trying.
then when we make the tea, another way would affect the taste is the temperature control of the water. Right now you're pouring, right? So you're also showing a very good way to how to add the hot water into the pot, right? But what's the temperature? Do we
Um,
really have to use a boiling water or
I'm
a
using
little bit lower temperature, right?
I'm using boiling water. Am I doing it wrong? Is that a bad temperature to use? Or
But this tea is very good. Yeah, I
okay.
would do the same way.
Okay, cool. All
And
right.
every tea is different, right? So depending on depending on the tea we are making, and also depending on our personal taste.
So Ryan, what I'm doing here is I'm doing 3 grams into a little teapot here.
Mm-hmm.
4 grams, sorry, and I'm doing 140 grams of water. You know, Daniel's style is going to not necessarily use a scale, but
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be more by feel, right? Like you're going to, or
Uh,
do you use a scale?
as I feel, it's really by really personal experience and personal taste, right?
Right.
Because everyone has different backgrounds, different cultures, different tastes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but the way that I make gongfu cha, that I usually would put about 6 grams to 8 grams of tea leaves.
Right. Just fill it right up, eh?
Yeah, so for you for your teapot, but it really depends because some people think that would be too strong, right? But I personally I like a little bit stronger.
Mm.
And then I have some friends they put 10 grams, 12 grams.
Yeah, Pedro from O5T was saying how you like stuff the pot full. He thinks it's a wonderful way to make tea, um, and was really we were talking about different ways of doing gong fu cha.
Yeah, there are different way of a Kung Fu Cha style.
Yeah, and for those watching, gong fu has the same Chinese characters as kung fu, which is kind of cool, and
Right?
and so it's like the martial art of making tea. So it's good times.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're gonna do a rinse there, Ryan. It's really. Do you do a rinse, Daniel? Do you encourage the rinse, or do you drink the first infusion?
Uh, I would do the rings.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would do it in rings. Right. So recently that we have some new customers come in, and then yesterday a Chinese lady, really asked us the same question, right? Should we rinse the Pu'er tea,
Mm.
right? And then I just say why not?
Hmm. 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 Yeah.
Then
Why
he
not?
say, and then she said yes because her tea master say that all Pu'er tea has to be rinsed before drink,
Yeah.
right? And then I said, well, most of tea, like of course, depend with Kung Fu Cha style. So the procedure to make Kung Fu Cha style the traditional way, we always rinse the tea the first time,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then after rinsing, we add the hot water. We consider that is the actual infusion, the first infusion. We count as the first time.
But I don't
So
have a
rinsing the
fancy
first
table
time,
like you do. You have that
but
lovely table for properly
that's right.
because you with the style that you're going to be able to show us there, you're going to
Mhm.
have some really nice thermal stability, right? Like it's going to be by you probably douse the teapot with hot water while it's
Mhm.
brewing, and there's like a lovely
Yeah,
way to bring out even better flavors, right? Like it's quite
yes,
fascinating.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
So
Yeah, keep going.
so
Sorry.
the kung fu when we make pu'er tea, right? So that a lot of people would make tea the kung fu cha style, which is using a small teapot or gaiwan, and then control the temperatures and with quickest cooking time, right?
Right.
So basically, that we can call this a kind of a kung fu cha style. Of course, that everyone has different way to make kung fu cha style, right? So it's slightly different, but it will be quite similar.
Right. No, that makes sense. Um,
Mm.
do you have so if we have 45 minutes for your talk today, if there
Mhm.
was one element or two elements that you really wanted to focus on, like what do you think like right now is really interesting to you? If you've been drinking tea and in the tea industry for quite a long time.
Yes, right.
Your years, if you want to remind our viewers, how long have you been in the tea industry, Daniel?
Well, 18 years.
18 years. So it's a good amount of time for this kind of exploration. What after 18 years of being in the tea industry, what is it that you find is really exciting for you right now?
Well, very interesting that when I start my business, right, it's quite small, very small business, and Pu-erh was not popular at all,
Right.
honestly, in year 2002, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most of my customer, more than 90% of my customer are Chinese local customers.
Right.
So they will come for oolong tea, like Teguanyin, Shuishan, uh, Danchong, Cliff tea, like that,
Right.
right? And then few customers from Hong Kong, they will come for Pu'er. So because I'm originally from Hong Kong, that personally I really enjoy Pu'er tea a lot. I drink a lot of Pu'er tea. And so when I start my business, I carry quite a lot of Pu'er tea, and then I love to introduce my tea to my customers.
Right.
So and a lot of Chinese customers in Vancouver, they know about teas and tea making already, right? So I don't need to educate them about tea making or kombucha. Just let them taste the tea and sell to them. And then
Very.
slowly we have a Westerner come ask about Pu'er.
Mm-hmm.
What is this tea cake, right? And then I spend some time to introduce and then show them how we make tea, kombucha style. And then slowly that more and more people interest to Pu'er in Vancouver. And more people, they would buy the Pu'er tea and try and then introduce Pu'er tea to their friends. And of course, that the Pu'er tea start to get popular in China,
Right.
right? So before Pu'er tea was not that popular, and then in year 2005, Pu'er tea become popular in China, mainly in Guangdong, of course, right?
Right.
Mainly in Guangdong. And then in year 2005, the Pu'er tea's market got a little bit like bubbles because the price increased a lot, and then it got broken, right? So after that, people would discuss about how to continue to introducing Pu'er tea to people in China. Right? And then people will find an interesting topic about uh, 古树茶, right? Like a Pu'er tea from single mountains, right?
Right. Yes.
For example, from Banjiang, Lao Banjiang, and then slowly Bingdao, right? So
Yeah.
then the 古树茶 becoming more popular, or the Pu'er tea from a single mountains or from a single village, right? So become
Right.
popular.
Or even a single tree.
Single trees, yes.
Yeah.
A friend of mine in China that he spent a lot of money just rent the tea trees for 1 year
Right.
and paying 300,000 RMB.
Oh my goodness.
That's a lot,
Yeah.
right? That's a lot.
What would that be in Canadian dollars?
Um,
Roughly.
$60,000
Yeah.
a year,
For a year to rent one
one
tree.
tree,
Yeah. That's
one tree. Okay.
and then that tree is going to produce. What do you think? How many pu'er cakes would you roughly think that one?
Not many. That's actually my friend not making any tea cakes. He just got the tea leaves,
Yeah.
loose leaf, and then given to friends as a gift.
Oh my goodness, that's interesting.
Other,
Yeah.
because it is not a commercial product, right?
You're
So
right.
because
No,
too
it makes
expensive.
sense.
So
Yeah.
he's in business, tea business. So he using this one as a marketing and can giving the good teas to the good friends or VIP customers.
It kind of reminds me of there's hand rolled teas that come out of Japan sometimes, and just they have to spend an entire day with like four people just to produce like 60, 80 grams of tea doing this old style processing method, and
Mm-hmm.
and you just it's just this is where kind of capitalism interrupts the opportunity to taste flavor. Is you just can't price it at the right price,
That's right.
right? Because it's just so astronomical, and it's not like, and you don't want just, I don't know, like it stops being even anything that's possible, and I guess we're in a place where we're finding the right balance of having that artisanal craft investment and interaction with the tea
Yeah.
production without it being so overwhelming that we can't find anybody who even can come close to affording it, right?
Like those are Fushucha that become famous mountains or villages teas that at the old time are inexpensive,
Right.
right? So that would bring up a very interesting topic about the 古书茶 or Thai tea cha,
Mm-hmm.
right? So right now, Pushu Cha is very popular, right? So a lot of our tea friends would come for asking for Pushu Cha,
Right.
right? So and then they will always come say that I don't like Thai tea cha, like I only drink Pushu Cha. Right?
What is the difference? Is it like a red wine versus a white wine, or is it a regional difference?
No.
Pardon my
So red
ignorance.
one and white one is like Shen and Show, right?
Okay.
So different way of process for the red for the show Pu-erh and Shen Pu-erh, like lighter color, darker the color. But when we talk about Gu Shu Cha and Tai Ti Cha will be another concept, right? So Gu Shu Cha usually the tea trees are older,
Okay. Okay.
right? So Tai Ti Cha usually is like it's like a tea like the usually it would be the bush, right? From the plantation
Okay.
or a cut tree cut to be very short, so
I see.
easier for
So it's like
for for
it's
harvest.
like a clonal versus a seed growing.
Hmm.
Is that the difference between those two? Is
Well, it's just like Pu-erh. Like when we talk about Pu-erh, most of the Pu-erh teas are from the tree,
mm-hmm.
right? Assamica,
Right. Right.
right? And then, but most of the other teas, most of the other Chinese teas are sinensis from the bush,
Okay.
right?
Interesting.
So, so in Yunnan there are Pu-erh tea produced from the trees, and then some other produced from the bush.
Interesting. So it's about how you let that plant develop when it develops
Yes.
into full tree height versus keeping it more like at hedge height. Like again in Japan, because that's where my experience is it's almost everything is grown at hedge height, but you see a lot
Mhm.
of conversation and discussion about the complexity of flavor that you can get from teas that are
Mhm.
grown to
Yeah.
full tree height. Are
Yeah.
do you have a preference? 18 years later, are you like in both worlds? Do you like them both for different
I don't
reasons,
know.
or do
Well,
you?
that would be a very, bring a very interesting question, right? Will the Pushuta still popular after 10, 15, 20 years? I don't know, right?
Mm,
Because that really depending on which tea will be more popular, right? For example, in 1990s, the most popular tea is the Thai Cha. So most of the tea from 1990s are actually from Thai Cha.
interesting.
Like
Okay.
Ming-Hai tea, very, very, very famous and popular. A lot of Ming-Hai tea cakes uh, they have the Tai Chi Cha,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
But if we look at the value, the Minghai tea from 1990s, very expensive,
Right.
right?
And it's using
So
this bush style
yes,
tea.
right. Because that would be there are many reasons that why people produce so much Thai tea cha, right? But basically it would be the government or and the tea institutes they promote Thai tea cha because they believe the Thai cha would be better than tree,
Right.
right? A lot of studies in the 1970s and 80s say report that or says that the Thai cha is better than the tree. So the
Interesting.
tree, the bushu, actually was not popular at the time,
Hmm.
right? And just about the late 1990s, like so bushu cha start to bring out people's attention, right? And then some tea factories use older tree to for their like wushu, right? For the tea cakes or loose leaf.
Interesting. You know,
So
it's
so
interesting because the concept I would have in my head is because really good pu'er, often you want it to be like aged, you want it to be stored in a very like careful conditions, like that allow
mm,
for that breathing to happen. You'd think that there'd be this relationship between using older or like more developed tea leaves. Like kind of the logic in my head would say, of course, that a tree that's been allowed to grow into tree height is going to have more
mm.
complex flavors because it's just given more room to really express itself properly. Of
Well,
course, it's going to
so
taste better. But that's interesting to me that the more popular selections from the '90s, which is honestly a lot of the tea that I've purchased from you over the years, has been from that time period. So I assume that a lot of it is this bush. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the Chinese word for it. I wish I could. Can you say it one more time? The two types,
the Tai Chi Cha,
Tai Chi Cha
and then
and
the other one is Wushu.
Wushu. Wushu, is
Wushu
that
means
correct?
oak tree.
Tai Chi Cha and Wushu, is that
Yeah,
okay? So the
yeah.
Tai Chi Cha
Wushu.
is the one that's this bush height.
Wu means old, right?
That's the older
Wu
one.
means old. Yeah,
Okay.
Shu means tree, old tree.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would make that assumption that that would be my preference. But it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting that I've had some fantastic teas from you. Probably the majority of them have been from this other style. That's
Yeah,
really
a
interesting.
lot of my tea drinking home, like not in normal days, that is the tea from 1990s or 1980s,
Right.
right? So so I'm not saying that Thai tea cha better than Gushu or Gushu better than Thai tea cha. That's it's not about the grading,
Right.
right, or the quality. It's not really not related to the quality for the tea for those different tea plants,
It's more how it's
right? But
managed.
it's really really personal taste,
Huh.
personal preference, right? I like both Thai tea cha and Gusu cha, right? So have a lot of Thai tea cha, especially the HTs are from Thai tea cha, and I also drink a lot of Gusu cha, right? So they both are good, but they have a different flavor, different taste, different mouthfeel. I like both, right? Just like apple and orange,
Right.
right? We cannot say which one is better. They both are good.
What's
So
gonna
Thai tea
what's
cha
gonna
for me
sorry.
would be would be both are good,
Hmm.
but so when we talk about Pu-erh, is that Thai tea cha better or Gusu cha better? Really depending on the quality,
Right.
right? So there are some low quality Gusu cha, and there are some good quality Thai tea cha.
Hmm.
So the quality, I would say, we should think first,
Right.
besides Thai tea cha or Gusu cha,
Yeah, we
right?
should
So
explore the quality before we look at. Yeah, that makes more sense.
what brings the quality, right? So the quality could be the region,
Right.
could be the weather.
Right.
If the leaf harvest in a rainy day, right? So how can the tea will taste good,
It would be saturated. You wouldn't have
right?
very many
About the
volatiles.
process,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So every factories or every farmer they have their own experience, right? So and their skills will be different,
That's
right? And
interesting.
also that how of course the storage will affect to the quality as well. So all those together,
Right.
right? So bring out the quality, so the mouthfeel, the flavor, and the taste, right? And also the potential for aging,
Hmm.
right?
No,
So the best way to know the quality is by tasting.
this must be so fascinating and so challenging for the farmers, though, because a lot of times they're only going to find out the results of their efforts like 20, 30 years later, because these old cakes, you start to find so much more complexity and so much more interesting flavor dynamics the older you
Mm.
let them get. It would be, it must, when people were experimenting with single mountain or single cultivar, single tree, it was such a
Mm-hmm.
big risk, right? Because they didn't really know, is this going to be like a beautiful flavor expression later. Like this
Mm-hmm.
this this these two different styles that you're talking about right now. How old is that back and forth? Is one style a little bit more newer than the other one? Is like is the the old trees, that's the more common style, and then it was in actually the 1990s that we started to see this development of.
Well, because I'm so lucky that I will be able to live in Vancouver
Yeah.
because Vancouver is the second biggest Chinatown in North America.
Right.
So we have a lot of Chinese population here, and of course that a lot of people that they immigrants from Guangdong, Fujian, Hong Kong to Vancouver, and then living for centuries.
Right.
So some of them are tea drinkers.
Right.
So they bought Pu'erh tea at the old time, right? And they keep drinking. So a lot of those tea could be from Republic PVO, Qing Dynasty, or 1950 and 60s, right? And they just keep buying and drinking.
That's so cool.
So they, 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 they are experienced drinkers.
Right.
So I have a good chance that to meet those tea drinkers, right? To and then they love to share their teas, their collection with me. I try a lot of vintage teas, right, and a few antique tea with them. I also able to buy some of those teas from them in a good price, right, affordable price. So and also that brings me more interest about learning and studying about Pu'er, right?
Hmm.
Because when we try the antique Pu'er, so the leaves, the way they blending will be totally different than 1950s and 60s.
Right.
And the leaves from 1970s, 1950s and 60s will be different than 1980s, right? And then 1990s, the leaf will be changed again. And
Hmm.
then after around year 2000, after 2000, right, the leaf also keep changing. And then year 2010, right, so the leaf also change the shape, the way they do the blending, like the names, right? So we can see that the Puerh tea, that a different period of time, right? So the Puerh tea leaves, they pick, the region of the tea trees they choose, the way they blending, right? The process,
Mm-hmm.
difference.
Yeah. No.
So at the ancient time, like go back to Qing Dynasty or Republic period, right? So a lot of tea leaves actually are quite big.
Right.
Like the leaves I can see could be 3 inches
Wow.
long
That's
for the leaves.
okay. Yeah. That's
And then so so those are for sure. Those are the gushu, right? Or we call it the leaf from the wild tea trees,
okay.
right? So they have a small ticket, right? So telling that the tea harvest from Jiwu Jingshan, right? So means the Jiwu Mountains, right? So there are at the old time we talk about the old 6 mountains tea,
Right.
right? So the tea mainly from all those 6 mountains. So the big leaves, spring teas with some tips to it. So the leaves are quite big, right?
Yeah. Well.
And then when the tea go back to go later to 1950s and 60s, right? So the leaves will be a little bit tight pressing,
Right.
right? And I talk with a lot of older tea drinkers. They always say that when they have their entities, it's quite mellow, quite smooth, quite soft, not much bitterness.
Right.
Of course, probably the tea that they have is pretty old already, right? So they didn't buy the tea when it's new, like over 100 years already, right? So probably they bought the tea been aging for 50 years. It's quite mellow, right? That we can tell much about this. But I have been taste a tea from 1950s and 1960s, the Hongyin red mark or the Langyin blue mark. Quite honestly, I drink quite a lot of those tea at the old time, right? And
Do you
the
still?
special about those Hongyin and Langyin is the Vancouver dry storage,
Right.
right? So in Vancouver, it's quite humid outdoor, right? Could be 80%, 90% humidities. But indoor, because we have the heat, so the humidity would go down to about 30%,
Right.
40%, may maximum 50%.
Right.
So tea age very slow, right?
Interesting. Yeah. Of course, because it's a
Yeah,
less encouraging environment for that fermentation to happen. So
exactly.
so you're gonna.
Especially those blue mark and red mark from my friends who storage in a pewter container,
Right.
which is let the tea age super slow.
Interesting.
So when I taste those tea in year 2002, 2003,
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty old already, right? But when I break those tea cakes, the cake is still highly compressed. It's very hard. And then when I make it, it's very bitter,
Hmm. It's like
very
it's
bitter.
like it's almost still
Finish.
too young. Like it's not developed in the same way
Yeah,
that it
it's
would have
like
developed if it had
taste
been from
taste like
China,
very
like or aged in
robust
China. Sorry.
taste, very robust in taste, like young
Interesting.
raw puer. But of
Interesting.
course, the flavor is amazing. It has very nice camphor flavor from those
Huh.
red mart and blue mart.
I wonder what those will taste like in 100 years. Hey, like with that really slow, very slow development. You know, like it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be interesting. Obviously, I won't be here to taste them, but I am really jealous of the people after me. You know, assuming we don't all get destroyed by
Yeah,
climate change.
and also that my one of my friend
Hmm.
that he because we start to have always a tea conversation with friends, drinking tea together, have tea gatherings, right? So one of my friend
Yeah.
knows the person, right, make who order the red mark in
Okay.
1950.
Oh,
So
interesting.
red mark is actually is order from Hong Kong,
Okay.
right? So they give the order to import export like CNP, and then CNP give to Sagwan, right? So and then Minghai, right? So that is how the CNP doing. They take the order and then they give it to the factories, right?
Yeah.
So I also know some of the herbal store, which is a Peking herbal store
Yeah.
right next to my store. I
Yeah.
remember in year 2003, one of my friend that tastes my red mark, and then he said, "Wow, this tea is amazing. It's so good. I have this tea. I bought this tea from a herbal store." I said, "Are you sure this from herbal store?" He said, "Yeah, just on tender in Colombia." I say, wow, that's great. I say, well, please have a seat. I just run to the store and then check with the owner of the herbal store, Peking herbal store. I talk to him, like Mr. Chen. I said, Mr. Chen, I'm
Yeah.
looking for some Pu-erh tea cakes. I
Yeah.
said, oh, what are you looking for? The wrapping paper has a red Chinese characters, cha, right? They said, oh, you're talking about red tea. I said, yeah, yeah, this is the tea that I'm looking for. And they said, too bad, the tea is sold out. And then he explained to me, this tea, he's selling this tea with losing money
Oh
because
no.
the tea was not popular at all.
Oh God.
He's
Okay.
just helping a friend to
Yeah.
sell this red mug for $200,
Oh man. Wow.
right?
Okay. What would, just for our viewers to know, what would the correct value of that cake be if it was
I
sold?
don't know. Probably would be worth more than $100,000 right now for a cake.
That's so crazy. I don't understand, but it's also has to do with just the sheer ability for some Chinese tea drinkers to be able to pay that level of money now. Hey, like it's just like,
Well,
and obviously historically too. Like there's just been so much wealth in the country. Quarter of the planet is in China, right? So there's just going to be such massive wealth in one country from just the sheer amount that's being able to be produced. But like you hear stories of like old like like the red robe teas and
mm,
and these single bushes that are only consumed by like the emperor, and like there are these like
mm,
really like careful stories. But is it when you get this really exciting tea cake like the red
mm.
seal, do you is obviously you taste it and you get really like, oh wow, this is amazing. Is it worth it? What do you think? Is it worth these crazy high amounts of money,
Well,
or
a
as
good
consumers
tea.
can we kind of skip the $100,000 mark and kind of find something pretty exciting for
Okay, so
$200?
I always talk with my customers or friends, right?
Yeah.
A tea right now, aged teas like quite expensive, especially the tea from 1980s, 1990s or older, very
Right.
expensive, right? Or some even though modern teas, famous mountain teas like Lao, right? So those are I think it's quite expensive for drinking.
Right.
So is that worth the money, right? So number one, we have to know, right? So some of those teas are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason. The
Right.
quality is good,
Right.
right? Or taste is good, right? So very very rare, limited quantity in the market. So
Right.
that's why the value go up so much. So is
Makes
that worth
sense.
to spend so much money for the tea? It's really depending on one's personal budget,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, for example, if I have $5 million to shopping, then why not to spend just a few percentage of the money to buy a good tea, right?
Rent 1 year of Red Robe, right?
But if I'm making only $2,000
Yeah.
uh, per month, why I should spend so much money for those teas,
Yeah.
right?
Doesn't make
It's
sense.
so expensive.
Yeah.
I can spend the same amount of tea and buying a lot of other
Yeah.
good teas that but not that expensive,
Right.
right? So I would say to keep a lot of people buy like red mark, blue mark, or entities is for investment,
Interesting.
right? But remember, a factory produced those teas, right? At the old time or ancient time, as for drinking. Tea is for drinking,
Right.
right?
They
It's
they
not just
didn't
for
produce.
keeping and then giving the value and then resell it. Right? Tea is for drinking.
Right.
So in my experience, if I when I collect some rare specialties, right, I would just pick it up and drink it, and then enjoying with experienced tea drinkers or
Right.
good friends,
Right. Right.
sharing.
It makes so
Right,
much
so
sense.
good
That's
tea is
that's
for
the
drinking and sharing.
that's the point, right? Like that's
Right?
the purpose.
That's the
Like
point. It's for drinking,
I guess
right?
my question was like, as you're almost 2 decades enjoying teas and exploring pu'er cakes, um, like how much of it is wrapped up in the brand and how much of it is real? Like, is it gonna blow your mind? Like when you have these $60,000 value tea cakes, when you drink them, can you does it taste like it's worth that, or is that just mostly brand and the
It's,
year and
that is really personal,
right,
right? So remember, you spend $6,000 for a tea cake, right?
right,
So is that guaranteed that the quality is good? Not necessarily.
not
As
necessarily,
it goes, depending on where you go, right?
right,
So the ticket or the tea could be the price could be marked up.
mm-hmm.
All right.
Could all be
So a good tea, would everyone enjoy? Probably not. Some people doesn't. Some people do, they don't like age Pu'erh.
right,
It's too earthy.
yeah,
So really depending on one's personal taste. Some people like the young raw Pu'erh tea. They love the flowery, sweeter taste, right? Some people like the tea that stronger with bitterness, give a very good mouthfeel, complexity in taste, right?
right,
So everyone is different. So that's why that when people come to our tea shop, right? So we always say when people buy like a full cake or buying 100 grams, 200 grams, I would say let's sit down and try the tea.
yeah,
Right? So make sure that they like it.
yeah.
The tea
Fair,
that I
makes
like
sense.
that may not be enjoyed by some other people.
Right,
But
yeah,
for example, I like Thai tea cha as well. So a
mm-hmm.
lot of people they don't like Thai tea cha. Right? I drink a lot of age Pu'erh, which
Mm-hmm.
is honestly most of the age Pu'erh teas are wet storage.
Right, right,
I like wet storage, a good wet storage.
mm-hmm.
But a lot of people they don't like wet storage. They hate it, right? So
So you're talking about
that's
the how the storage is going to impact the flavor of the tea. And so for our viewers who are watching, just joining us right now, we're talking to Daniel Lui of the Chinese Tea Shop about an exploration of old tea cakes, and Pu'erh is what Daniel's been focused on for the majority of his career, if I understand it. And we're just talking about how the storage portion of these tea
mm,
cakes impacts flavor, and just also for you to know that most tea, you don't want it to store it for these long years of time. Like your green teas are particularly fragile, and they only last 8 months to 15 months
mm,
max. Whereas what Daniel is working with, and it's actually, when you think about it, now that it's getting a little bit more popular, even before that, really, if you ask me, what a brilliant decision to do that, because the longer he holds on to these teas, the more value that they have on a certain level. But at the same time, like he's saying, tea is meant to be drunk, right? So anyway,
mm.
so you want to continue your conversation, your storage conversation there?
Yeah. So we have to understand when people talk about that dry storage and wet storage, right? So I will say that probably right now that most people will say dry storage is good and
Right.
wet storage is bad,
Fair.
right?
Okay.
So same thing to Thai tea cha or Gushu cha. So there's no comparison, right? Between which one is better.
Like definitely dry
So
storage.
dry storage is good. I like dry
Oh,
storage. Like
sorry,
my
I
friends,
misunderstood.
Wet Mart and Blue Mark, they are
It
dry
goes both
storage.
ways. Okay. Okay.
So the
Okay.
tea been aging, keeping for 50 years, 60 years, still very powerful.
Right.
That because of the dry storage,
Right.
right?
Right. Okay.
I also taste quite a lot of wet storage Blue Mark from my friends.
Interesting.
It's really good,
We've
very
been
good.
we've been talking about. I had a guest on my show. I do a show every week.
Mhm,
And I had a bread maker on, and he talks about fermentation curves. How
mm,
like he stores it at one temperature on one day and then a different temperature on another. It'd be so interesting if you stored it in like Hong Kong for a certain amount of time and in Vancouver for a certain amount of time, like that kind of
mm.
like that fermentation curve and how that would change depending on the
Of course.
and that's going to have the storage conditions changing in the middle of its storage life, how
Mm,
much of an impact that would have on the flavor too. Like 10 years in Yunnan, and then 10 years in
mm.
Guangdong, and then 10 years in Vancouver,
Yeah,
and it'd be
that sounds amazing. Yeah,
yeah, it'd be different flavors again, wouldn't it? Like to
yeah.
it'd be so interesting to track that storage lineage.
Well, that means that we need to have a lot of experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have the tea that in Hong Kong dry storage, right? I also have some taste a lot of Hong Kong wet storage.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a lot of tea that ordered from China. They've been stored in Kunming, right, for a few years, and then moved to Guangdong for a few years, and then moved to Vancouver, right? So I also have the tea that directly shipped from the factory in Yunnan to Vancouver, very dry.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
And
So that's even
then a
slower.
lot of tea that have been keep aging in different temperatures and humidities.
What about this one? This Ding Xing Hao Pu'er. Do
Can I
you?
still see much? Sorry.
I don't know if you can see that. Okay, but there.
It's a refreshing light that's too bright
Oh, I'm
on my
sorry.
side. It's the Ding Hao.
Yeah, it does. That's what it
Yeah.
says.
Okay. Yeah.
Nine,
So
nine,
that is
90s from the 90s.
yeah. So this is the tea that from according to information from my source, right, is the Ding Hao is there's a anti Ding Hao, right? That they've been stopped producing already, right? So and then in late 1990s,
Hmm.
so um, someone from Taiwan that who really love Pu'erh tea drinkers that would like to have the Ding Hao again. Right? So he make the order to the factories. So asking that the Ding Hao using the same recipe of the anti Ding Hao. The
Interesting.
leaf had to harvest from the same region, same mountain, and
Hmm.
then produce this tea. So I got this tea in year 2002,
Yeah.
right? 2000, no, 2003, between 2003, 4. Yeah. And then with them is the tea been keeping in China for a few years already, right?
Interesting. Okay.
So
So you
yeah,
got lineage.
this is kind of, we call that natural storage.
Okay. Where
Not too humid and not too dry,
not too humid, not too dry.
right?
I
And
do.
and then the tea been sent to Vancouver and aging for quite a long time.
I think our audience can probably tell that this is just the tip of the iceberg of what's possible to go into detail with you, Daniel. There's just so much that we could discuss. We are unfortunately hit the 45-minute mark, where we need to go into our next transition, as we do have some exciting speakers coming up after you. I really regret to cut this conversation short, but did you want to maybe leave some thoughts with the viewers that are watching about Pu'erhs, about this exploration of old cakes before we say goodbye today?
Oh, sure. So okay, so when people Pu'erh tea drinkers that when they're thinking to buy a Pu'erh or find a Pu'erh tea for drinking, right? So because the Pu'erh tea has show and shun, and shun has different ages, different storage, different tea trees, different recipes. They all different, right?
Right.
So there's so many different flavor and taste. I would suggest people to get a lot of smaller size of Pu'erh tea,
Okay.
trying and experiencing all those varieties and find out the one that they like and then continue learning.
That makes sense.
Right. So because some people they try the puer tea one time, they say, oh, I don't like it because the maybe the flavor, the taste, maybe the qualities, right? So
Right.
just give a more chance trying different kind of puer tea, right? And then people that may find out that puer tea is so interesting and so many um, stories or knowledge behind.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, definitely. I think that this will be a really interesting. I think all of these conversations are going to turn into this lovely opportunity to go back and explore in a little bit more detail the recordings. There are going to be archived versions of these on YouTube.com. If anybody watching wants to find Daniel, you can find him in Chinatown in Vancouver. ChineseTeashop.com is also his URL. If they want to find him there. Really appreciate you coming on, Ryan. I know we didn't include you in this conversation this much this time. You've been looks like you've been smiling though, a big smiles in the background there. Did you have any final words that you wanted to throw in there for Daniel before we let him
Yeah,
go?
I don't think there was anything more beautiful than when you said you were talking about how tea should be appreciated with your friends and how tea should
Yeah.
be appreciated with other people who will enjoy the tea, and that
Mm.
when you get your hands on a good tea, you're going to drink it.
Yes, right.
And I think that that's probably the one thing that any person like myself, a novice, should seek out, is somebody who loves tea as much as you do and can tell the stories that you can outside of a little 45-minute window, so that you can develop the relationship with
Yeah,
you
I
and
know.
develop those friendships.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
100%. Thank you so much,
right,
Daniel, for
thank
coming
you.
on. We're looking forward to. I'm sure when things settle down, I'll be over to Vancouver to drink some pu'er with you. In the meantime, perhaps we can drink tea together virtually sometime
Well,
in the future. It would be
You're more
lovely.
than welcome to come and visit. I'd
Okay.
love to see you again.
Wonderful.
And then thank you for everyone that listen, watching, right?
Lovely.
So yeah, so maybe we can talk about more about Puerh teas or tea makings in the future.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
You have a wonderful day.
All right, same to you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So and Ryan, good dialogue with Daniel there. We're just Ryan and I are going to leave everybody here for about 10 minutes, 12 minutes it looks like, and we'll be coming back. Do you have the list there of who's next? I think it's Obubu, but I don't want to say that.
It is, absolutely.
Okay, and then their selections just came in. I don't know. Like we had a number of selections that were supposed to arrive last week that arrived today, so it's kind of interesting. But looking forward to having. Oh, you do. You have them. How did that even happen? That's amazing. The team is
delivered to my door.
Wow, that just arrived mid last session. Okay, obviously our volunteers are the most amazing volunteers ever. Okay, Ryan, we'll come back for that 3 p.m. 3 p.m. I think I got it this time. We'll be doing a session with Obubu Tea Farm. We're going to have George joining us, it looks like. George from Obubu, and he does some pretty exciting tours of the tea garden that he's with, and we'll be hearing a little bit more of his stories when he comes on shortly. So we'll be right back.